Dryden. The next speaker is Mr. Haresh Ghandi. Welcome.
Thank you, Mayor. Okay, so just to start off, I wanted to refer back to the last meeting that we discussed integrity on December 15th. Now, I'm sure all of you are aware, and the members of the public that were in attendance that day, that I guess we kind of went into a negative spin, and we went beyond in the procedural code that you have set out. Has set up a boundary as per your waiver in council meetings, and several of you went beyond that boundary, yet nothing was done. Right now, the basis behind a value-based, I guess, integrity system is for the people that are following it to be far from far enough away from the boundary that you don't need to specifically define that boundary, right? And as far as I'm concerned, you went beyond that boundary, and no one even said anything. There's no discussion about it. You didn't try to apologize afterwards, reflecting on what had happened. If your emotions had kind of taken control over the situation, and I think that some sort of accountability is needed, because I know that even you, if you review that tape, will see that you probably aren't happy with your behavior if you're one of 3 councillors. So I thought it was important to bring that up. Now, the second thing is, I actually looked at more than just the Mississauga and Toronto codes of conduct. I looked at the other ones across Canada, so including Vancouver and Calgary. And some of these other municipalities, they actually do use some value-based components, but they also have rules in other areas. And I would describe that as kind of a hybrid between the two policy, strategies that the city manager presented. And I think that is really something that would be good for our city, just because a lot of the policies that we have had before we kind of started creating this code of conduct document are related to that area, and in those areas we have specific rules. For example, your expense policy really has a lot to do with code of conduct, and there are specific rules that you have to follow in that area. Now, I feel that there are some other areas that this code of conduct covers that also require rules, not because I think that any of you would intentionally try to break those rules, but it's just that judgment isn't the proper mechanism to enforce or, establish that boundary. So just to go over some of the points that I've covered in a letter that I've prepared for the councillors. First of all, I just wanted to talk about member-organized events. Now, Brampton's in a very critical phase in our history. We have a lot of land that's farmland, and it's going to all get developed in the next 5 to 10 years into houses or other business type uses, or maybe even universities, hospitals, other types of infrastructure. Now, it's really critical that we maintain that high level of the image of a very high level of integrity to the public, and to kind of, portray that. I think it's important to set a limit on the contribution that development firms that are actively proposing projects or have proposed projects very recently to an event organized by or heavily supported by a councillor, that there's actually a limit on how much money that they can donate, just so we know that objectivity is maintained. The next thing is in terms of elections. Now, during that last meeting, a lot of you mentioned that there's a lot of foul play on the parts of other candidates. Now, as someone who was trying to get a little bit involved in this election process and see what the real issues that are facing our city, I actually tried to contact a lot of the candidates and some of you as well, and I found that a lot of you, or 1 or 2 of you, broke a lot of the election rules, and yet there's no enforcement, right? And I guess it is fair what you have said about some of these other candidates that also broke those rules, but I think that whatever code of conduct that you make, every candidate that is participating in an election should have to follow during that election period just to maintain the standards of ethics of Brampton, because again, we're just kind of making Brampton look bad when that kind of thing happens and those negative comments are made, and lots of rules are broken. And you can look at the list of some of the things that I observed myself. I have not listed anything in this document that I didn't observe myself, or talk to someone and hear over the phone from one of these people personally. And I did not list any names of any councillors or the mayor, because my real goal here is for policy to be made for the future to be better, and not to look back on the past and say you did this wrong and you did that wrong. Right? We're trying to make change. We're trying to make a better city. The last piece I want to talk about. I know I'm a little bit over time, but in the city manager's presentation, she listed the two, penalty mechanisms that are in the Municipal Act. Now, I think those are important to have, but there's a lot of cases where those are kind of extreme penalties to enforce in a minor ethical or conduct violation, right? So I proposed several, more fitting, penalties that would kind of be more useful if, for example, a councillor swears in the council chamber as they did last meeting, right? And, for example, taking their membership away from a committee, remove them as the chair of a committee, asking them to reimburse expenses if some sort of financial transaction was involved in the foul play, or simply just requesting an apology, as, I kind of would request of some of you that feel that you have, not acted to that procedural code, section 11, which deals with members' conduct in council meetings. I would request that you apologize to the citizens of Brampton, because that kind of behavior really isn't acceptable. I used to be a student council president of Brampton Centennial Secondary School, and that kind of behavior was never displayed by high school students in a council meeting, because they, showing respect for democracy is very important. Residents of Brampton, when our democracy was challenged, they went to war and they gave their lives so that we could have this chamber, so we could have this democratic process. And when you fight in this chamber, it's not really about you or any personal attack that has been made upon you personally. You're here to represent the citizens of Brampton, and you kind of disgrace our democracy when you act that way. That's the end of my presentation. Thank you for taking the time to listen to me, and I hope that you'll incorporate some of these changes to the code of conduct that I've recommended in this document. Thank you.